32. Trade 5.
Okay, we think we've addressed our audio issues. Hopefully we can bring some commentary back. And of course, if you didn't want commentary, you are free to mute us and watch the joy. But I'm Matt Kanek. I'm here joined by Morris Greenberg with the second round of the National Scrabble Championship.
Wow, and Bradley has found an awesome bingo air burst. I'm not sure I would have found that uh, right away, but he's
63.
got it down. He chose to take it for two less points than placing the R from Runtier uh, at the beginning of the word. My guess is he just wants fewer big spots for Will to counterplay with.
Honestly, I'd be so excited with a rack like that to like see a word. I might just play it too. Interesting placement for sure by Bradley. He's already got a deficit in this game, given he had to exchange and he's been bingoed on. But he's probably got reasons for doing it. And it is a nice find in either case. So well done to Bradley. And we'll see where we go from here. Will is not going to be able to do almost anything because he has no vowels. May just have to drop whiz through the I for 25.
Yeah, Wiz seems right. Maybe adds if you really don't want to stick the Z in that triple lane, but it adds a DZ that is through the A and air burst. But I think we'll probably opt for Wiz. And it is interesting that he played Jet over Jest last turn. He kept two S's, and this board really wasn't friendly for S's. Um, I might have played Jest, but I understand the logic from Will. You don't want to necessarily telegraph that you have an S. It also creates a juicy J spot for Brad to score with potentially. So, yeah, I understood the logic of Jet, but he basically threw into the worst case scenarios when you play Jet over Jest.
That is tough. Hey, Morris, could you give us a score update since we're here?
Yeah, so it should be 119 to 95 if all the scores have been counted correctly or
And
placed to count correctly
that's
by.
in Will's favor, correct?
Yes, in Will's favor, and it's Will's turn. I also saw a question of will there be call-ins in coverage in the live stream? There will be later on in the tournament. We're likely going to devote half days apiece to either NWL or Collins, just so it's easier for players to know which board one they're going to. So Will opts for
Whoa.
swim.
What an interesting play. I would have dropped whiz without thinking about it for a second.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this board is sort of weird where there aren't really a lot of scoring spots in general right now. And so maybe he thinks, I don't. My worst case scenario is if Brad has a response after Wiz of something like, I don't know, an AZE word like glaze to the triple, that would make it really tough for me. Whereas swim doesn't allow a lot of worst case scenarios. So it's an interesting move, and I think definitely a good idea. And Brad responds nicely as well.
Chat mentions a swim is valid, so I don't know if this is Will setting up a hook he doesn't have, or maybe he's thinking Bradley might have some lexicon confusion. Maybe he had a reason for doing that. I'm very curious. I would love to ask Will what his thoughts were after, but it's going to work out super nicely for him as he manages to pick up three vowels and then bingo with anodizes through an I. So just a crazy sequence there. I'd love to hear the thoughts behind swim because that seemed very non-standard, and then it worked out so incredibly well, so instantly.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I mean, non-standard it's still in these sorts of situations where you're up by a little bit and the board is really closed. That's often where you can make these sort of nuanced moves and gain that extra 1-2% chance of winning. So good on Will. Really good on Will.
Wow. Will, maybe still a little bit of trauma from last game. Remember, Will played a bingo that put an A in a triple triple line and immediately got triple tripled on with Negatron for 131. Will it happen again? I don't think so. I don't see one through that A with the letters Brad has, but definitely something interesting that may get in his head.
Yeah, and one thing to note is we mentioned that Will has played a bit in the International Dictionary and the NWL Dictionary you're seeing here, Brad has too. I think Brad has mostly played in the International Dictionary the past few years. We'll see if there's another dictionary option of do I try this word in the International Dictionary, especially because my opponent also studies this dictionary too.
Yeah, I'm so rusty on Scrabble. I thought at first a swim might be a Collins only word, and Will was baiting for it, but that's a TWL word as well. So
Yeah.
interesting play for sure. It looks like Bradley has a flagon through the A and anodizes. You could play something like loaf as well and just double that F. You'll score some points here for sure. Nothing, stands out as a super obvious play though.
Yeah, I like Flagon a lot. And as a score update, the score is right now 219 to 121 in favor of Will. It is Bradley's turn. He definitely needs to score a bit to start clawing his way back. So it looks like he's set up Fop now, keeping a more synergistic leave of Long. It scores a few fewer points of only 29 as opposed to Flagon's 36, but definitely a good idea as well.
33.
And here comes loaf. If you're Bradley down nearly 100 points, you want to think about leaving a triple triple open, but I don't think you're that desperate this early in the game. I think you want to score some points. I would have preferred to play Flagon in this instance, just to try to get rid of a few more tiles and let the randomness take over. But loaf is still just a fine play, and we'll see where that PONG leave takes him.
Yeah, with an eye, it's great. Without an eye, it can be clunky. But he draws an eye.
He does.
Not necessarily the other tiles you want, but it's getting towards bingos.
And we see Marlon Hill in the chat mention ING is a trap, and I completely agree with that assessment. It is a thing people like to fish for in Scrabble. They think it's quite synergistic, but a lot of the time it turns into exactly what Brad is looking at. You got your eye, cool. You're still in a lot of trouble, unless you actually hit that bingo. The G is a pretty nasty tile. It only scores 2 points, doesn't give you a ton of flexibility or options. So for that reason, I would have preferred Flagon in that case, but there's definitely some people who would play Loaf, and you could absolutely make an argument for that as well. What are you seeing here for Will, Morris?
Not much is the short answer. Uh, Maybe on in the top left corner, creating ow, OW, and LA, to get rid of the A and the W on his rack. Acidy as a leave, it isn't the best, but you can draw into some good stuff. Like cyanide is a word, for instance, that pairs with that. And On still scores over 20 points. He does have a lead of 65 points right now. So, if you keep scoring a bit and getting closer and closer to good tiles, it's not a bad strategy in my view.
Yeah, definitely a choice for Will to make here. Although I don't know. The chat has mentioned multiple times front hooking nigh with an A. That is not a word. I don't think we're going to see that come down in this game, but that's an option.
Yeah, I think that might be a Colin, as some people like to say.
Is it a Colin for sure?
Yeah, it is. It is
It
a
is.
Colin. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that will make things very interesting against two players who primarily play in the Collins lexicon. We may see somebody get desperate and try it later on. If I'm Will, honestly, I may leave that spot and just kind of dangle it out there all game to see if it gets taken. But you do telegraph that you don't think it's good if you play an A in any spot except that one. So we'll see. Maybe Will is thinking about these things right now. Maybe he's not thinking about these things right now.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point that you're going to be telegraphing if you play an A that isn't valid. Though I think with On, it doesn't necessarily telegraph that. I mean, if Bradley thinks that Will is a bit of a risk taker and goes for bingos, uh, it could very reasonably. He could think, well, maybe Will's just trying to save that spot for a bingo next turn. So, I think yeah, it's a good point, but I think Will could maybe get away with it in certain kinds of plays here of playing an A. But he goes for a disc, which does take an I or an S back hook.
Also takes an O.
Oh, right, of course, an O as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good catch. Uh, so this, I think, should be the high scoring play here. It doesn't keep as synergistic of a leave of away, but scoring 30 points isn't a bad thing.
So Bradley almost certainly is going to hit that disc spot either with the I or with the O. I see David Firstman suggest disc I and Pyrog, which would be a good option. You can also play disco and roping or pouring or something like that. One thing I'm definitely thinking about if I'm Bradley is if I'm hitting that spot, I want to be very confident in whatever word I play and whether or not it takes an S. So does pouring, P-O-R-I-N-G, take an S? Does roping take an S? Do I know that for sure? I'm thinking very hard because I do not want to set up a spot unless I am very confident.
Yeah, and for the viewers at home, roping is the one that takes the S. So Bradley, I think rightfully, is going for the more open option. He is down 249 to 180 at this point, with it being Will's turn. So, he probably wants to keep that bingo lane open. But another thing to keep in mind is if you mostly study the International Dictionary, there are more ing pluralizations in that dictionary. So it could be he knows that roping is valid in the International Dictionary, but not necessarily in the North American Dictionary.
We are having conversations now about the score widget. You see score machine broken, kind of reminds me of the McDonald's McFlurry machine memes. McFlurry machine broke or whatever. We're hoping to have that fixed after lunchtime is now the update we're receiving. For now, we're going to do our best to keep the scores dropped in the chat. If anybody really astute is quackling this game in the chat and wants to take those responsibilities, we would love that. Otherwise, we'll do our very best and keep you all updated with the scores there.
29.
Yeah, and I think actually the score we post in chat should be, say, 249 to 180, though after warm, it'll be closer to 289. It'll be 29 extra points, so it'll become 278 to 180. But yeah, Will definitely has a commanding lead, which is what you always want, especially after a really tough first game where he just couldn't ever quite get the right stuff to come back. And David Firstman points out Fruit Cup, if the right letter was available. What a nice find. But unfortunately, no available I or C for Bradley. He does have the first blank. Or, sorry, no, the second blank. I forgot the first play of the game involved the blank. So he will likely be trying to shape up his rack a bit this turn to get close to a bingo next turn.
This wreck is surprisingly tough. As ugly as it looks for Bradley, I would still sit here for a while and try to see if there's some weird upward or, it looks so bad, and yet there are options for possible bingos. Now, I'm not seeing anything. I'm also very bad at Scrabble, so I'm leaning into the chat to find one if there is something. But otherwise, we might see him think for just a while, and then eventually we're going to see, I guess, something come out that's not a bingo. Chat likes Pafui to the I and roping. Definitely want to try to figure out a way to get rid of one of the U's and probably the F as well while scoring some points.
Yeah, I do wonder, though, since Brad is now down by nearly 100 points, he might want to keep the D open in Disco because that's going to be probably the highest scoring point lane, aside from the W that Will opened up. But the D is more probable. There are more 8-letter words starting with D than 8-letter words starting with W. So he might not want to play Fui, even though it keeps a better leave than other options, just so he can maintain that high scoring spot.
I agree with that assessment. I'm inclined to play Fugu here. I don't like taking out the ropings hook, but at the same time, Fugu is going to set up the P underneath, and Bradley will be holding the P. So if he does draw a bingo next turn, it should be able to play in a spot that likely won't get blocked. So Fugu, I think, might be the play we see here through the U or through the G rather.
Yeah, so Fugu, Fugu, it's one of those useful words that 4-letter words with 2 U's in them, which It's the exact sort of thing Bradley needs right here. So yeah, that seems like a pretty good option. I'm wondering if he could try to open up anything on a different part of the board. It's tough, but like, would you consider tofu here? Uh,
That's yeah, that's a great question. I mean, these are the racks where because you're not going to be able to score anyway, you would love to take this opportunity to shape the board in a way. But is tofu crazy
uh,
or is it
off of
correct?
yeah, yeah, and that's off of the TO from Jet and Hooved. I think I actually really like that idea. If I'm down by 98, like I am with Brad, uh, that that would be the kind of play I would make. But
I just
he,
don't think you can justify scoring 7 when you've got another option that seems good for 16. 9 points is a lot. He doesn't have the last S. There's still one S unseen as well. So it's a tough play to make. And holding that U alone is gonna decrease your bingo percentage next turn quite a bit. So I still would have played Fugu. If I had seen Tofu and been that creative, I would have thought about it for a while, and I bet there's a few crazy players out there who would have done it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's definitely an interesting thought. And
yes.
go ahead, Morris.
I was gonna say, so yeah, for the viewers at home, Matt called me crazy, and we're all good, but I'd be that crazy player with tofu for sure. That's the kind of play I would definitely make. Uh, in my view, I often think when I'm down 100 points, make my opponent have to think, right? Make them have to think about closing down another side of the board, that sort of stuff. But no, 9 points is a lot, to be fair. Totally understood, but I'm the crazy type to play tofu for sure. Sign me up.
Speaking of crazy, our score widget is still broken, so Morris, can you refresh us on the score? Let us know how desperate Bradley is to try to crawl back into this game.
Yeah, that's fair. It is 278 to 196 in favor of Will, so that is an 82 point lead. And Will's turn as well is right now. So if he scores, 30 points, which is fairly, he can't actually this turn, but often if you think your opponent will score 30-ish points the next turn, uh, that might be reason to play Tofu. But Will makes a very nice play of AY creating Ab and Ryu, and it scores 19 points and uh, really just continues to build his lead, gets rid of some of the tiles that aren't synergistic on his rack. Really just good play.
Yeah, nice job by Will. Just kind of keep things tight, keep things closed. With the lead, you're not going to open the board, and you want to try to keep your rack flexible enough that if your opponent does choose to open it, you're going to jump back on that spot and close it. Poor Brad here. He pulled into his PRT leave, which was a really beautiful leave, DOV, and that is not good news for his prospects of bingoing now or next turn or winning this game.
Yeah. It's a 101 point lead right now for Will. So, you know, Bradley needs to start creating options that give him a chance to get back from that kind of lead. I mean, luckily he knows Will can't have a blank, for instance. AY might suggest he's close to bingo tiles, and we know Will isn't quite as close as that might suggest. But Bradley still needs to start, I think, figuring out a way to get rid of some tiles, but also give himself a few bingo lanes on different parts of the board so that he can bingo multiple times to come back.
20.
This has us looking at the same spot as Tofu. I think I would consider opt for 7 from that O in Hooved. So maybe I'm crazy now. Bradley elects to keep the most flexible leave possible, or one of the most flexible leaves possible. He's just going to play Vow, score a good amount of points right now, and leave DRPT. So he will need at least one Vow on this 2-tile draw to have a shot to bingo next turn. And we'll see if he gets it in just a moment.
Yeah, and if you're Will, I mean, one thing is there aren't a lot of spots to just score in general on this board. And so he might continue to play 2, 3 letters at a time, not open up anything more, and just kind of try to maintain the lead he has, hoping Bradley doesn't open up something that he can't hit himself. So
I
it's
was
a
trying to
weird
find.
situation for Will. Yeah.
Will definitely is thinking about the D and disco right now. The last thing he wants is a 90 to 100 point bingo to come down from that spot. I was looking at ways that he could consider blocking that. Underlapping Fugu's not in the cards right now. He doesn't have a letter to backhook the U. So I was like, what if he plays like Glaciate? But
Oh,
that opens up a huge bingo line. You absolutely can't do that. But some kind of word through that spot would be a good idea, I think, to address that floating D in disco.
that's lovely. Great find. What a flex on camera by Matt Kanek.
It's a terrible play, but
It's cool looking
if
though.
it didn't dangle that E out there, it'd be a fun option. But you can't open that line for Bradley to hit sevens on a board with this shape.
Yeah, and one thing to notice is that there are a lot of E's compared to the rest of vowels unseen in the bag. I think there are 8 E's unplayed at this point, or 8 E's unseen from Will's perspective, I should say.
Wow.
And then most of the A's have been played or seen from Will's perspective since he's keeping 2, and most of the O's have been played. It's really an E heavy bag for vowels, so he should be okay with playing off his E. Uh, but yeah, Glaciate, Matt is right, does open up such an easy bingo lane. You're not going to do it.
I might play D bag here from the D. I'm a little concerned about oh, whoa.
He's going riskier.
Whoa. Whoa. 100 point lead, blank unseen. And Will is thinking about playing B flag to open another triple triple line. I think he's hit the clock. I think he's made that play. It definitely scores better than most of the other options we've seen. But if I'm Will, I drop game 1 and then I get tripled on in this situation, I would be on tilt for the rest of the tournament. And for that reason alone, I don't think I'd be able to make that play.
Yeah, luckily the G isn't the best tile in the triple lane, unlike last game sticking an A in the middle. But it does give Bradley some higher point options. He did have pre-told before off of the U in Fugu, which he still has, but he also now has words like prattled now through the A and B flag. Uh, so yeah, I get it from Will's perspective. It just scores so much better and gets rid of a lot of the clunk all at once. You know, I kind of think of it as if I'm going to lose my first 2 games of nationals with triples, it wasn't in the cards this year anyway.
Right, right. And it definitely, as Morris mentioned, that's probably an equity play. Definitely, it helps you on average score more points than your opponent. But with a 100 point lead, you don't think about equity as much. You think about winning this game. And it's really tough to have that philosophical discussion of, well, do I just start closing the board but only scoring 10 or 12 points? Or do I continue playing aggressively and try to run up the score but give up the slight risk, the 2% chance that my opponent does hit the triple through the G?
Yeah, and I guess one other thing to keep in mind there that Will was definitely conscious of is Brad is playing Prattled. Very nice find. Is when Bradley plays Vow, he's probably keeping pretty good letters at that point. And he plays Fugu and then Vow. Fugu, yeah, you might just want to get rid of those 3 tiles specifically, but after Vow, you should be thinking my opponent's probably keeping 5 pretty synergistic tiles at that point.
Yeah,
And
5
so,
synergistic tiles or 4 in a blank. That's about all you can conclude from Val. But Will must have seen something. Maybe he saw the pool. Maybe he saw the sheer number of E's and was not super worried about it. Will must have seen something. The other G's are also out. I think, a GG bingo would definitely increase the chances we hit there. But that was the last G. So I think I don't know. I would never have made that play, but Will Anderson is a national champion for a reason. So
yeah. Oh, and look at what he's playing now. I was just like drawn to Axe below the LED in Prattle, but he plays Accept for many more points than that. a 60-point play instead of a 50-point play to be precise. And that gives him, even after Bradley's bingo, a 91-point lead of 381 to 290. I'll type that in chat as well.
Yeah, I would have played Axe without thinking. For sure, it blocks the bingo lines in a game where I'm winning by a lot. And Brad has done what is the worst case scenario for Will. He's immediately drawn back into bingos. So he is, inmates or tamians or however you say that. Will might be kicking himself for playing except. Yes, it's more points, but I would have addressed that spot absolutely 100%. Axe is an easy way to close the board, score a bunch of points, and still hold decent letters. Maybe he was thinking about the number of E's unseen and he wanted to play 2 E's. Maybe he thinks he can outrun a bingo anyway. He's just going to turn on the jets and start running. But this will be interesting now. Brad's going to be able to play a bingo and score very well.
Yeah, he could tie the game with Tamin's Tameins below the E and the D in prattled. That would be 91. He is down exactly 91 points. So it will be a tight game, and there are also only 9 tiles in the bag. So after that, it will basically be an end game, a pre-end game to end game decision for Will. Bradley should see Tamians, Edmonds, all those bingos. For those newer to Scrabble, one classic way to start studying is by knowing 6 synergistic tiles like A, E, I, N, S, T. What pairs with it. So A, E, I, N, S, T, I think pairs with all but 3 or 4 letters for sevens, and uh, Bradley should know all of the ones that pair with an M there.
I think this game might get crazy. Will has pulled just an absolutely abysmal rack after accept. He pulled basically all of the vowels that we were seeing in the pool at once. And even though it'll be his turn in this tie game, he's not going to be able to do almost anything. And Morris, how many tiles are in the bag right now?
There are 9 tiles in the bag.
So
So
Will have no recourse, no option to exchange because only 2 tiles will be remaining. Will's going to have to try to fight out an end game with whatever that rack is.
yeah, and we were talking about how there were 8 E's unseen. Will now has 4 of them. They will be the last 4 E's in the game. So yeah, just a tough pull for Will there. Sometimes Scrabble seems easy until it isn't. And that was one of these situations.
That's a beautiful assessment. Scrabble seems easy until it isn't. Morris, I'd like to take a second while Brad looks over his bingos and decides which one to play. For those watching who are maybe less familiar with Tournament Scrabble, how can people get more into this game? Where can they play tournaments?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw a link in the chat that will get them to scrabbleplayers.org/info. And if anyone wants to kind of refresh that during the tournament, you can just do the exclamation point play, and the Moo bot will show the link for that. So just if you can't remember the precise link, just do exclamation point play in the Twitch chat, and that will take you to all the info you want to know about Scrabble.
Most metropolitan areas in North America have a decent-sized Scrabble club. They typically meet about once a week for you to get some recreational games in and meet some people in a laid-back environment. For those who are a little more die-hard, there's just a list of tournaments all over the place. Typically, several tournaments happen every single weekend in North America. So pick your poison. Club, casual play, tournament, competitive play, online play. There are many resources to play online as well. But yeah, if you're watching Scrabble for the first time and want to get into it, we all love this game. We're here for a reason. These players are here for a reason, and yeah, lots of resources to get into Scrabble.
Yeah, it's this game. It's gonna get crazy so quickly. I'm just my eyes are on this right now. But yes, everything Matt said, totally good, totally valid. Uh, get involved in Scrabble, but Bradley is laying down the 7, so it's
it
gonna
is
be a tie game.
Tie game with 2 tiles in the bag. I'm concerned. Bradley, I think, took a lot more time than he should have on that turn, and he's only going to have about 4 minutes to play an end game with, some might argue, is one of the very, very best players on the planet, if not the best player. So I would have loved to have more time if I were Brad to go into this game.
Yeah, I think from Bradley's perspective, his end game options might be a bit easier because he will likely draw the Y and the K, which are the last two high scoring tiles here. Uh, I mean, we'll see what two letters he leaves in the bag. The score now is 381 to 381 if the player scored every play correctly, to be fair. But it is it is down to the wire. There are two tiles in the bag. This is as competitive as we get, and the K remains in the bag, so that will help out Will a lot. I mean, we'll see if he. I think it is the right idea that he's doing. Play off as many tiles as possible and hope for the best. Uh, One option players often like to do with two or three tiles in the bag is not empty the bag, so they'll have something called tempo advantage in the end game. If for those newer to Scrabble, whoever finishes all their letters first, that's when the game ends. So in a close game like this, that sort of tempo could matter. But Will has so many E's that just playing off one tile right now probably isn't worth it.
There are 2 tiles left in the bag. I know one of them is a K. Morris, what else is unseen?
So I think it's KI are the two letters unseen.
K-I. Okay. That is huge for Will that Bradley did not pick up the K. I think the K would have given him scoring options to sneak out the end game. Um, if Bradley drew the K instead of the Y, too, the Y won't really synergize well with what Will leaves. But it was huge that Will's going to be able to draw that K and maybe sneak some extra points out of this game. Bad
And he
break for
also
Brad.
blocked. Oh, sorry. Yeah, he also blocked the good Y scoring spot right there too, which is pretty important for him.
He allows another Y spot, though. YOU and YES is still going to be able to play. Does
Okay.
that lead? So for Bradley right now, he sees that Will's rack is terrible. I'm sure Bradley has tracked the tiles correctly. Although, honestly, on stream, I shook so much because I was so nervous that I mistracked to lose a game to Will at this tournament 3 years ago. But Bradley certainly is going through now. He sees Will's not going to be able to go out in one move, and it's on Bradley now to figure out how can I go out in two. I need to score points, yes, but I need to go out in two moves. I need to play now, and my next move has to clear out the rest of my rack. He's only got 3.5 minutes now to figure out how to do that. So it will be interesting to see what he's able to do in a time crunch on stream when the pressure's high.
Yeah, it's I I want to look at this position for a bit. I mean, he has YOU set up that gives him Naoi. I don't know if there's any places for Naoi, but his main strategy in these sorts of end games is an out in two, right? Do you get one turn, your opponent gets a turn, if they can't play off all five of their tiles in this case, and then Bradley will hopefully have one final play to go out and seal the win. That's what he's looking for. So I guess he does have Anion through the N in Runtier if he does play you. Uh, yeah, I guess what are you seeing any two-turn sequences that he can do here?
Yeah, I think you play Anion right now. You set up YOU.
Nice. Yeah, in two spots, right? That sets up a high-scoring YOU.
Yeah, because there's nothing Will can do, even though Anion opens up okay. There's no other words he can make. He can't play KI because NI is not valid. Um, I think Anion right now is maybe the way to win. Bradley's
It
found a very
is.
nice word of Noyao, but I don't know that that's going to fit in a place that makes that play relevant. It's a good word, yes. But I think playing Anion now wins the game just from my initial assessment. Well, I don't. That's so hard for a player to see. So we'll see what Brad's able to think of. Morris, have you ran this end game?
Yeah, so I just looked at it. Anion is our top play, so commentators win on this game.
Yes, I've
We found
still
the best
got
end
it.
game. Yeah, I feel like it was. I'll take like 2% of the credit because I did point out Anion. But
Oh, the credit goes to Sam Kaplan, I believe.
yeah,
He's the one who saw the anion spot. I was just the one
okay.
who flipped the order here, but that's so disgusting that it sets up the Y in two spots.
And so there are a few other wins. So not C through the Z, for instance, wins just because it scores enough, keeping YOU as an option for our next turn. So even though that isn't the out and two sort of strategy that players often look for, that will just be a brute force outscore more than your opponent way to win.
22.
So Will's got Reiki down from the R. Ooh, Auzo. Okay, that's gonna hold a
Who's it?
yin. A-Y-I Uzo. That's gonna hold a yin. A-Y-I-N. But I don't see a spot for him to put that. I don't
Yeah,
see
that's
any
interesting.
out. So I
Yeah,
think
this
just
is
because of the time crunch, maybe Brad. Oh, he reached into the bag. Did he know the bag was empty?
I think
He
he
had
did.
to. He had to.
He saw, but I think this should still be enough to win. He is up 403 to 397 now, which seems because Will can't go out here either. Uh,
Will can
so
play Reiki. He has to block Rainy from the R. And I
right,
Yeah, Brad's gonna be able to hit Yak back from that. I can't do this math right now. I need a piece of paper, but this is gonna be
uh,
tight.
it's going to be tight, but I think Bradley can eke out the win here. Uh, yeah. So Will can only win if Brad doesn't find the right sequence, essentially. Uh, So Will does need to block. I mean, he has to assume Brad can see Rainy here. He can't assume that kind of error. So he could play Reiki, but he might be looking for whatever play could induce the most kinds of mistakes here. Uh, so he might even just play REI if he thinks that could induce
No,
more
that gives
mistakes.
back a Rain and a Yin.
Oh, of
Can't do
course, of
that.
course. No, never mind. So, uh, yeah,
R
maybe.
E E leaves. I think Wiki and Tiki are both options. So
Yeah,
REE force Bradley to make another play, but I mean, there's so many plays like YIN and YES that like Bradley I think is just going to be able to win this game anyway. Bradley is up 6 points. It is Will's turn, but Will has absolute garbage. So this is incredible. Honestly, great job by Bradley of crawling his way back into this game. I had chalked this up as a Will victory already in my head. Beflag, I think, was a very curious play. Accept was definitely one Will's going to be thinking about for a while after this because of the bingo that came down right afterwards. I wonder what's going on in Will's head right now if he's rethinking some of the choices he's made. Well, right now he's probably trying to solve an unsolvable end game, but shortly thereafter, I think he's going to have some things to look back on here. I'm not saying he made wrong decisions. In Scrabble, you have to make hard decisions and you have to gamble all the time. But he's going to be thinking about this one. This is a loss that I think will stick with him. And a big part of the Scrabble, especially at a long tournament like the Nationals, is the mental game and being confident that you've made choices that were okay and not kicking yourself when they sometimes don't work out.
yeah, yeah. It's a tough position. I think we can all relate to Will right now, who's if you've played in a tournament and you think things are going well, because he had over an 100-point lead at points in this game. Uh, and yeah, it's uh, it's a big blow when these sorts of games happen.
Morris, just to confirm, Reiki doesn't win this game, right? Bradley's going to be able
It
to score enough points.
it should lose by 3.
Yeah,
Uh,
Bradley, I think, can hit Yank back or Inky.
Yank and Inky both score just enough to win. So Yak actually would lose by 1, but yeah, Yank or Inky will win by 3. I mean, Will could also. We don't know if there's any sort of scoring mistakes in the game, right? These scores are all just being based on us running the Scrabble engine ourselves. But if there's a scoring mistake, right? If someone was off by a point or two, that could impact Will's decision making here.
And I wonder if Will and or Bradley. I think maybe the reason Bradley spent so long on that Tamian's turn is not because he didn't know that word, but because he was recounting the entire game. I know that's a thing many experts will do just so they don't lose on a recount. Morris, why don't you explain to the crowd what a recount is, real quick?
Yeah, good point. So recounts are so. we are getting all the scores from actually entering them into a computer and the computer correctly adding up the score. Uh, Players in over a live board, you have to count up the score yourself, and there are occasional mistakes that people make. They could be off by a point or two here and there on different turns. And so, a when a game is close enough, you are allowed to ask for a recount, which basically means if, let's say, you lose by 1 point, or even if you tie, you can ask for a recount, and then you re-add, like you retally all the scores from the game and confirm that everything was scored correctly. Until you actually sign the slip of what the final score is and submit that to your tournament director, the score isn't official. So you're allowed to recount it as many times as makes sense until you actually submit the signed score sheet by both players. So yeah, I'm guessing Bradley. He spent a lot of time we saw on that Tamian's turn. My guess is he was either recounting the score or tracking the tiles at that point, just to make sure that he had feasible wins at that point. Uh, so tracking the tiles just means we know, for instance, or we knew that the last few tiles in the bag were KI because we were tracking it via the computer. Players have to do that individually as well during a tournament, and that could also be a source of error sometimes. I've definitely lost games because I mistracked. I thought there were certain letters either in the bag or not in the bag, and my opponent then, to my detriment, played something that won for them. But Will does
Mhm.
play Reiki, and Bradley needs to make sure he plays Yank or Inky to give him a 3 point win. If he plays Yak, he loses by one. But again, we don't know what the players see on their own score sheets. We do know that the score right now is 411 to 403 for Will. And
Bradley
that,
has 25 seconds. He's gonna have to do
oh my
something
God.
quick.
Oh my God, Bradley.
The
So,
only the best way to lose is to go overtime here. Here comes Yank. Bradley is likely quite confident it's going to win, but especially on a stream, man, you get in your own head. So Will's going to drop the E behind Fugu, right, and then win by or lose by just a smidge.
lose by 3 points. You might not see Fugue as an option.
Oh, he does. He's
Oh,
Will
he does.
Anderson. Of
He's
course he
Will
does.
Anderson. He
Five. Yeah,
sees Fugue.
okay. Intense. Look at this. 6 seconds left. 5 seconds left. They're going to do the math, and I think we're going to see a 3 point Bradley Whitmarsh victory over Will Anderson.
Wow. That, what a game.
What a game. That was nuts. Brad snatching a victory from the jaws of defeat. Great job. And Will just absolute heartbreak. Where I think just the worst possible thing that could have happened did happen with a blank bingo followed by a 91 point follow up.
So it's a heartbreaker for Will. These situations are never fun, but luckily there are 29 more games to Scrabble. And someone pointed out Will in the recent Word Cup lost, I think, 7 of his first 11, then clawed his way back. So he definitely can go on these streaks of like losing a bunch and then winning way more because he wins a lot more often than he loses in the grand scheme of things. In small samples, 2 losses in a row can happen, but there's a lot of tournament left. So I think they're recounting right now.
Absolutely, that blank slip is still sitting next to the board. So we'll be seeing a recount for a couple minutes as players go through this game, but we've got the scores calculated. So barring an absolute fluke, this is a 3 point game.
Yeah, it's wild. In the meantime, once again, I'm going to just throw the play link if you want to get involved in playing Scrabble in tournaments. If you want to come back from 90 point losses, or more like my style, if you want to have 90 point leads and lose them like Will did here, go to that link and you'll be able to check out what tournaments are around. This is the 2022 Scrabble Players Championship live stream presented by Scrabble Go. I think we're going to take a short break for a few minutes before we come back for the next game. And we'll see you soon.